Hi, my name is Patrick Reagan. Welcome to the Operating System's Windows Services, where we discuss common services provided by Windows, including Active Directory, the managing files and folders, and managing printers. In Part 3, Understanding Windows Shared Folders discusses how to share a Windows folder in the Windows Shared permissions. It will also discuss how to combine the NTFS and Shared permissions. Lastly, it will discuss administrative shares in the Shared Folders MMC. For those who are going to take the A+ exam, there are practice questions toward the end of the video. Most users are not going to log on to a server directly to access their data files. Instead, a drive or folder will be shared, known as a shared folder, and they will access the data files over the network. To help protect against unauthorized drive or folder access, you should use shared permissions along with the NTFS permissions, assuming that the shared folder is on an NTFS volume. When a user needs to access a network share, he or she will use the Universal Naming Convention, or UNC, which is //servername/sharename. Windows shared folders use the Server Message Block, or SMB protocol. SMB is the most popular file server protocol used today. Besides Windows, SMB can be found on Linux systems via Samba, many network-attached storage or NAS devices, and Apple computers. At one time, the Windows shared folders was sometimes referred to as Common Internet File System, or CIFS, which was based on SMB 1.0. SMB 1.0 has been deprecated and is disabled by default in Windows 10 and 11. SMB 1.0 lacks encryption and has a vulnerability that can be used to take over the control of a remote computer. In modern and supported versions of Windows, file and printer sharing services use TCP port 445. Older SMB implementations used port 137, 138, and 139. Traditionally, Windows file sharing allows you to restrict access to specified shared files and folders and choose which users have access. Basic sharing allows you to share a file or folder with a specific user and restrict the user to read or read-write actions. Advanced sharing offers the greatest amount of control, which you can do the following: share files, folders, or the entire drive, choose users or groups with which to share files and folders, limit the number of users who can use a file or folder at the same time, mainly for security purposes, set permissions on shared files and folders, such as allowing users read, change, or full control permissions, choose which files are available to users offline. Personally, I never use basic sharing except when teaching. Advanced sharing gives me more control, therefore I prefer using advanced sharing options. Basic shares allow you to simply share the folder and assign groups or users. Permissions that you can grant a group or user is read or read and write. The advanced sharing allows you to share the same folder with different names and give you much more control of the shared folders. When you assign groups and users, you can assign read, change, or full control. The read permission allows you to view files and subfolders, view data in files, and run programs. The change permissions allow you to read files and folders, change data in files, create files and folders, and delete folders and files. The full control permission allows you to do everything that the change permissions, as well as take ownership of files and change file and folder permissions. It is Microsoft's best practice to assign everyone full control and then use NTFS permissions to specify who can access the folders and files. To share a folder, you would right-click the folder and click Properties. Click the Sharing tab and click the Share button. Specify user or group and grant the read or read-write permission level. To see the shared folders for the computer, you can type in the // computer name from the command prompt or File Explorer. To use the advanced share options, you would right-click the folder and click Properties. You would click the Sharing tab and click the Advanced Sharing button. The Permissions button allows you to specify the permissions for the shared folder. You could also use a share name different from the actual folder name, specify how many users can simultaneously access the shared folder, and configure caching options. As already shown, the user can use File Explorer or their search box to open / computer name or / IP address, and then we'll see all of the non-administrative shared folders. The user can type in / computer name / share name or / IP address / share name to access the shared folders directly. The user can type in / computer name and press enter, right-click the shared folder and do one of the following: pin to quick access, pin to start, create shortcut, and map network drive. The first screenshot shows Windows 10, and the second screenshot shows Windows 11. If you choose to create a shortcut, you'll be prompted to place the shortcut on the desktop. The user can then double-click the shortcut to open the shared folder. For Windows 11, you'll have to select Show More Options to see the Create Shortcut option. When you map a network drive, you can actually point a drive letter to the shared folder. You can also specify different login by selecting the Connect using different credentials. You can also use the netuse command from an administrative command prompt to map a drive, such as netuse // file server /share. Use quotes if the server name or folder names have spaces, such as netuse quote / file server /share quote. The drive will appear under this PC. It's very common to combine share and NTFS permissions when providing access to resources on NTFS volumes. When users connect to a share over the network, both the share and NTFS permissions combine, and the most restrictive set is applied. Remember, if the user is logged in directly on the machine and accesses the folder directly, the share permissions do not apply, only the NTFS permissions. For example, let's say you create and share a folder with the following settings. Share permissions, via the Share tab, you assign the sales group with the read permission. NTFS permission, using the Security tab, you assign the sales group full control. In the preceding example, the share permission read is more restrictive than the NTFS permission's full control, so users can read the folder and its contents, but will not be able to make changes. If the same users were to log on locally to the computer and access the files using the drive letters, and not using the UNC share name, they would bypass the share permissions and their level of access would be based on the NTFS permissions. In this example, they would have full control. There are several special shared folders that are automatically created by Windows for administrative and system use. Different from regular shares, administrative shares do not show when the user browses the computer resources using Network Neighborhood, My Network Place, or similar destinations. In most cases, special shared folders should not be deleted or modified. For Windows, only members of the administrators, backup operators, and server operator groups can connect to these shares. An administrative share is a shared folder typically used for administrative purposes. To make a shared folder or drive into a hidden share, the share name must have a $sign at the end of it. Because the shared folder drive cannot be seen during browsing, use a UNC name which will include the share name and the trailing $sign. By default, all volumes with drive letters automatically have administrative shares, C $, D $, E $, and so on. Other administrative shares can be created by as needed for individual folders. You just need to add the $sign to the end of the shared name. Understanding the folder structure allows you to remotely navigate to a folder on remote computers. For example, if John logons to a computer, this profile is kept at C:\users\John, and the desktop folder is stored at C:\users\John\desktop. Therefore, you can navigate to John's desktop folder on a remote computer by accessing \\PC1 as an example, \C $users\John\desktop. If you open Computer Management, you can navigate to Shared Folders/Shares to see all shared folders and their location. The Sessions nodes will allow you to see who is connected to the shared folders. The Open Files node will show you the files opened remotely by the users using an UNC. Question: You shared a folder with the change permissions to the Everyone group. The NTFS permissions are set read to the Everyone group. What are the effective permissions for the folder when accessing via the UNC? Answer: read. Question: What protocol does Windows Shared Folders use? Answer: SMB. Question: What does an administrative share end with? Answer: $. Question: What command would you use to map a network drive? Answer: net use. Question: What type of path do you call the following? \PC1 \data \OCT23. Answer: UNC. For more information, visit these sites. In summary, a drive or folder can be shared, known as a shared folder, and they'll access the data files over the network. To help protect against unauthorized drive or folder access, you should use shared permissions along with the NTFS permissions, assuming that the shared folder is on an NTFS volume. When a user needs to access a network share, he or she will use the Universal Naming Convention, or UNC, which is \\server name \share name. Basic sharing allows you to share a file or folder with a specific user and restrict the user to read or read-write actions. Advanced sharing offers the greatest amount of control. When users connect to the share over the network, both the share and NTFS permissions combine and the most restrictive set is applied. If the user is logged on directly on the machine and accesses the folder directly, the share permissions do not apply, only the NTFS permissions. Different from regular shares, administrative shares do not show when a user browses the computer resources using Network Neighborhood, My Network Place, or similar destinations. Administrative shares end in the $sign. If you open Computer Management, you can navigate to Shared Folders/Shares to see all shared folders and their locations. You can also see who is connected to the shared folders and files. Thank you for watching this video. The next video will be Windows Services Part 4, Managing Windows Printers. Thank you.